Hi everybody, I'm Casey Turner from Express Your Artsy Soul on Instagram, and this is my first YouTube video. I decided to record the process of making a junk journal from these old bingo cards that my husband found at a flea market and brought home for me. So here you'll see me trying out some paper that I wanted to attach to the inside of the covers. Since I'm just using the cards and not having an actual spine from like book covers or something like that that normally would have their own spine, I had to create my own. I decided to go with this black and white floral page from a watercolor book that I have, and I'm just going to attach it to the inside of the covers. I do want to have some kind of closure for my book, so here I'm trying to dig through my stash of ribbons and lace and kind of auditioning some different ribbons to see what I like and what goes with my book covers. Sometimes it takes me a little bit to decide what I like, and as you'll see a bit later, I didn't actually like what I chose and glued in. So I'm using tacky glue. I'm usually a Mod Podge person, as you can see a bottle of it there on my desk. And I do love hot glue that I will pull out later. But tacky glue does serve a really good purpose when I'm using ribbon or harder paper like cardstock, especially to adhere it to the inside of these vintage covers. Sometimes I do have a little bit of trouble with the glue, but I'm glad that the glue didn't dry before I decided I didn't want this blue ribbon in my journal after all. You'll see that in a few minutes. So here I'm trying to like finagle the spine and decide how I'm going to actually work the spine as now it's exposed. So I'm digging through more of my ribbon and lace to see if there's something that I want to cover the outside of the spine with. There's that glue gun. I love my hot glue gun. Sometimes I don't feel like pulling it out and plugging it in, but it really does do a good job at gluing certain things that are heavier, or in this case, I decided to use some sari ribbon, if that's even how you pronounce it, I have no idea, from a Five Below rug that I pulled out, and the hot glue gun works perfectly for gluing this ribbon to my covers. I love how I can just cut a little bit and then tear it and have the raw edges. I did work a little bit here to try to see if I had enough length, or maybe I should say width, of the ribbon to close my journal properly. I didn't want it to be too tight because as I close the journal, it will pull on the ribbon. So I did actually have it looser when I glued it down instead of gluing it tightly. And then when I was finished and closed it, it worked out perfectly. As you just saw, I didn't like the blue ribbon to close my journal, and I decided to use the same black and creamish tan colored ribbon for my closure. So I just hot glued them in there underneath the paper and went over the outside with some Mod Podge. I think that looks much nicer and brings it together a bit more with the black and cream spine. I'm trying to tidy up a little bit. I'm very messy, as you can see by my desk. So next I pulled a bunch of books aside and had them next to my desk because I knew I wanted to use certain papers in my journal as my signatures. A friend had just given me this huge Webster's dictionary, actually just this morning, and I thought they would be perfect as pages for my journal. She also gave me this very interesting book. I'm not even sure what it is, but the cover is actually out of fabric and it's pretty 70s retro, but I thought some of the pages in the inside would be great in my journal. This is a book, it's actually called A Book of Knowledge, which is interesting, but I'm just pulling out pages that I know are large enough that I can fold in half for my signatures. Some of them are a little too big. As you'll see later, I have to cut them down, but I do like using larger book pages that I can actually tear in half and then fold again to have 2 pages, actually, which would come to 4 pages. Sorry, that doesn't make sense, but I'm just grabbing some different larger pages that I can fold in half and put my signatures together. I do love collecting older books. I go to different antique malls and thrift stores and flea markets and find vintage books, and I just love having the different patinas of the paper and the different images and textile. I do enjoy having the variation in my journals. So when I turn the next page, I never know what is coming next. I did find some of that graph paper at a thrift store, and then here I'm digging through some of the fodder that I made, the black and white fodder during a lesson in fodder school. I'm just trying to get a decent number of pages so that I can have the right amount of spreads that I typically work with in a journal. I personally like to use a journal for like a month at a time. So I tend to choose the number of pages that would be for 1 month. So if I have like 18 pages, then I get 36 spreads. I think that's right because sometimes I do actually get confused with the numbers of pages equals the numbers of spreads. Some people just do single pages, but I like to do spreads. So here I'm just putting together the signatures. This is the first signature. I think I went with 13 of the folded pages for one signature. And I don't really think very much about what papers I'm putting together. I think some people really do try to put together what they really like. I just kind of grab and stick them in and put the signatures together. I did just have to trim down the larger paper there, and I checked to make sure that my signature fits nicely inside my book. And now I am working on the second signature. I think I had 27 folded pages in all, if I can remember correctly. So now I'm going to get started in sewing my signatures into my journal. I typically use the pamphlet stitch if I'm going to sew. Sometimes I do actually tape my pages in, but that's if I use single pages and not folded pages. I chose this green thread just because that's what I had on my desk. Although now that I think about it, I wish I would have gone with black, but I'm actually out of black, so I had to go with green. I don't use an awl like a lot of people do. I don't measure like a lot of people do. I just wing it. That's the kind of person that I am. So I just use a larger needle, like maybe like an embroidery. No, not embroidery, an upholstery needle. And I just wing it. I just kind of guess and put the 3 holes in my signature, starting in the center and then going to the top hole and leaving some thread in the center so that I can end up tying when I'm finished, and going down to the bottom hole and then back up through the middle. I'm sure that sounds confusing as I'm saying it pretty quickly, and I did speed up the video a little bit so that it wasn't 40 minutes and went down to 13 minutes. But I'm sure there's a lot of videos out there, and if you have any questions about anything, you can absolutely find me on Instagram and send me a DM. So here I am working on the second signature, the same as the first one. The second one is always a little trickier because you have the first one kind of in the way and you don't have as much space in the spine to work with. And then you're trying to line up your thread and your holes to match the first signature, but somehow I always get things a bit uneven, but that's okay for me because I'm not a perfectionist, as you can tell by my desk. So I'm just working on this quickly, and I came back up through the center hole. I'm tying my thread off, and it's basically done. I'm just making sure that all my papers are in there nicely, that my signatures are in there nicely, and just assessing my journal, which I'm loving it already and I can't wait to play in it. Here I decided to go through my ribbon again and pull out a very brightly colored, which I actually do not like orange at all, but I felt like this color ribbon went really well with the look of this journal and with the color palette that I've gone with. And I'm just tying this off in the center between my signatures just to add some color, add a little something, and it's done. Thank you so much for watching. Again, DM me if you have questions.